So, a lot of people think that they can't build a personal brand yet because their life is still in the ugly middle. Like maybe you are rebuilding your money or your career is like not making sense on paper. Your house is not giving architectural digest. Hello, but mine definitely doesn't. And your routine is very inconsistent. Your business is not producing screenshot worthy months and your success story does not have a clean ending yet. So you tell yourself, I'll just post when I have results, or I'll post when my brand is more credible, or I'll tell the story after I've made it through. But you need to understand that the problem isn't that your story or your life or your content and brand is unimpressive. It's just that you haven't learned how to properly identify what is meaningful about what you're going through right now. You do not need to have arrived to have something worth sharing, but you need to understand how to use this chapter that you're actually in to give people something that they desire to follow. Welcome to the corner of the internet where we study why some people, ideas, and brands become absolutely impossible to ignore. Hi, I'm Erica. I study content psychology, creator strategy, businesses, and how to remain strategically human in a world that's increasingly being filled with AI generated sameness. Around here, we are not chasing creating more content for the sake of feeding social media machines. We are trying to become seen, remembered, and chosen by building an amazing brand and brand world, as well as creating content that helps you stand out. So, today we're going to be talking about how you can build a personal brand before your life becomes a super polished success story that you think people are waiting for. I unfortunately think social media has done a great job of giving people a image of what somebody who looks like they have it all together can do. It has really made it hard for people to believe that if you don't look like specific people or your lifestyle doesn't look like a specific thing with big income, a beautiful office, an impressive title, an audience that's already clamoring for you and asking for advice, or at least an aesthetically pleasing body, morning routine, or, just living situation, that you don't have permission to build a brand or permission to be visible online. And if you are not already there, then you don't have anything to offer people. But I want to kind of turn that idea on its head because that assumes that building a personal brand specifically is a public trophy case, and it's not. A personal brand, simply put, is just the meaning that people learn to attach to your name. It is what people come to expect about your perspective, what questions they associate with you, what values show up in your decisions, what kind of tension that's going on around certain topics in the world that you help them understand, what transformation they believe that you are committed to, and then what emotional experience they have when they encounter your content and your work. Of course, achievements can help strengthen a personal brand. Like, duh. People are really, really attached to the victory story, right? Think about the New York Knicks. But they are not the only material that you can use to help people start to understand what your brand actually is. And then the other thing that I feel like people don't understand about, waiting until life is perfect, does it just psychologically, it makes you feel like you have control. That if you wait until everything is like curated and you can tell this beautifully pieced together story, that you'll know exactly what it means. You'll know exactly what details mattered and whether or not the risk paid off. But creating from the messy middle of it all admits, I don't know exactly how this is going to turn out. And it's very vulnerable, right? Which is why a lot of people don't want to do it. And I know this personally because I'm not building this channel or my brand right now from my cleanest chapter of life. Like, I'm currently rebuilding my income after losing my job when I went out from my job on maternity leave from having a high risk pregnancy and then an emergency C-section that required my daughter to be in NICU and me to have some health complications. Like, I'm trying to kind of refigure out what my career looks like after several versions of my stability kind of disappeared. I'm trying to make my creative work more profitable while raising a young child without childcare. I'm rebuilding my relationship with visibility after spending a lot of time on the back end of people's businesses and feeling kind of overlooked and rejected, or like I had somehow fallen behind my own potential. And I'm doing all of that while trying to become the kind of person who follows through instead of constantly starting over. That is not a version of a story that most people think you're supposed to lead with, right? We're trained to introduce ourselves from our most impressive angle. Here's what I achieved, here's what I made, here's this polished thing that actually makes the story easy for this other person to digest. But the truth of the matter is one of the most meaningful things that you can do and that I'm learning right now is that even though my outcome is still unresolved, my journey is actually valuable because there are other people who are in the thick of it with me who need to see what I'm going through and what I'm experiencing. I'm not just teaching visibility for the sake of just being visible. I have true personally never struggled with being visible. I sing and dance and have been a performer. I love kind of being front and center, right? But I'm teaching it because I understand what it's like to have ideas, talent, experience, intelligence, and have something worth saying and still struggle to turn that into recognition and momentum and income, which is really important to people right now. So, and maybe for you, your authority is hiding in a similar place. Your story is in a similar place. Maybe you haven't escaped all your problems completely, but in how you have either navigated through it or how you have either studied what's going on can give a lot of value to people who were following your journey. You also need to remember too that when you're creating a personal brand, it's not necessarily a resume. Like maybe one day your personal brand will be your resume, right? But like right now, a resume purely asks like what exactly have you completed and accomplished. But your personal brand asks like what do you notice? What's your perspective? What's your beliefs? What's your values? What do you repeatedly say or investigate or curate? What decisions are you making? What lessons are you learning to do differently? What identity are you trying to become? The only thing is about visibility is that you're just doing it in public. Like, for example, somebody can have a super impressive resume, but a weak personal brand because nothing in their content reveals how they think strategically. And somebody early in their journey can be deeply compelling because their perspective is clear, their stakes are real, and their process gives people something to follow. And those are the people getting hired because they're not trying to pretend to be something that they're not. You see this all the time online with people shooting their shot to brands and they are just starting out, and you'll see those people get those opportunities, and you wonder, well, like I got this degree and this qualification and this thing. How come I can't do it? It's because they learned the value of making themselves visible and creating a personal brand. Being unfinished does not mean pretending to be an expert in something that you haven't earned. It means being precise about what you know, what you have done, and what you're still discovering in the process. And I think that's crucial because I know a lot of people feel like there have been a lot of people who have scammed people before by pretending to be experts. This is not about you being fake about what you are doing. There's too many ways for people to discover if you're telling a lie or not, right? But you can say, here's what I know because I experienced it. Here's what I know because I lived it. Here's what I know because and what I'm testing because I'm still inside of it. Here's what I understand because I've gone through it. Those are three different kinds of authority, and all three of them can be long in helping you create a personal brand. You also need to understand that there are probably places that you already have like authority within the brand world that you're building around yourself. Like, number one is like, what have you already done? This first source is literally your history. What have you actually done that gives you the right to explain something? It doesn't have to be like the most glamorous version of expertise. Maybe it's you manage a team or you help clients solve a specific problem. Maybe you built a system or you sold something. Maybe you recovered from a setback or you navigated a process that other people are still extremely confused by. Your past work doesn't become worthless just because your current chapter is messy. For example, I have 2 degrees in human behavior. I have a bachelor's in psychology and a master's in social work. I tried to pivot out of it because I didn't want to do clinical work right after school. And because of that, I got to work behind the scenes in people's businesses and operations and launches and sales and content strategy and client delivery. I've helped businesses for the past 7 years organize their ideas, communicate value, and turn attention into actual action. Right now, just because I lost my job while I was experiencing motherhood for the first time doesn't erase that history. It is a very colorful history to pull from, right? And it gives me a lot of authority in different ways. A setback can change your current circumstances without deleting your earned experience. Number two is something that you understand unusually well. So the second source that you're pulling your brand from is interpretation. What do you understand at a depth that other people may not? Maybe you notice the emotional reason why a group of people cannot follow through. Maybe you can translate complicated ideas into language that people fully understand. Again, for example, for me, my work is not just here are 5 content tips. My work is like, here's why this content creator is culturally relevant right now. Here's why visibility can feel emotionally dangerous when somebody is desperately wants it. That perspective is unique to me because of my background and my degrees and my education. It's also helping build authority. And the third thing is like, what are you willing to, be known in public or investigate in public or be curious about in public? So the third source is your current experiments. What are you actively trying to understand, build, repair, or prove right now in your life right now? This is where building in public kind of becomes powerful because you're not claiming that you've mastered something. You're literally showing that you have not, in fact, mastered any of it. Like you're actually saying that this question that I'm asking myself right now about my life or about this, my finances or about my health is enough for me that I'm going to pursue it seriously and document what happens and share what I learn to other people who might be in the same spot. So, for example, that could be building a business from scratch and nobody in your family is an entrepreneur. That could be taking over a family business and you don't have any clue what you're doing. That could be you rebuilding a career after motherhood. Listen, as somebody doing it, it's something people want to talk about. Those can all become compelling brand narratives when the investigation is focused. You need to just remember that your unresolved journey becomes credible when, the question that you're trying to explore is clear, your effort is real, and your lessons are very honest. I want to actually do an example here with you right now. Let's take a phrase that is emotionally true, but strategically vague that I see people do in content all the time. I'm rebuilding my life. Okay, that's great that you're rebuilding your life. And that can absolutely be the heart of your personal brand. But by itself, it leaves many unanswered questions for people who may be digesting your content. Like, what are you rebuilding specifically in your life? And through what way are you rebuilding your life? And for what purpose? Is there an end goal? What does the audience get to understand by watching you? You do not want your audience to have to do all the hard work for you. You need to be doing it for them because if they have to think too hard on it, they're going to leave and go find somebody else who doesn't make them do that, right? So one way you could do that using this example is I'm rebuilding my career and income after life knocked me off course or after getting let go from my job that I had for 10 years. That's very specific and makes people be like, okay, I kind of want to watch it. This works though specifically because people can clearly understand, okay, here's your problem, here's your method of doing it, here's the emotional stake behind it, here's the larger question that the story is holding together. Like, of course I can go like deeper into these, but you get the overall gist of what I'm saying. That doesn't mean that every single piece you put out has to become like a sad update about you rebuilding, right? Please don't do that. As somebody who has done that, please don't do that. It does mean that you give your audience kind of a lens to which they can view your content through and a lens to understand why your strategy or your videos or the things that you're sharing or the experiments you're taking and your reflections all belong in the same world, right? The last thing that you need to know really is that people really do care about the unfinished chapter way more than you think. That's why people love cliffhangers. They clamor for cliffhangers. You see people just diving deep on Reddit all the time about like cliffhangers and what they mean and what could be the possible next part of the story. And it's because it provides tension. There's tension there. When there's an unfinished chapter, there is tension that people want resolve because people love resolution, right? Your brain loves resolution. So if there's a gap between where you are and where you're trying to go, the gap gives your story movement. You have movement in the direction that you're trying to go. So it gives something for people to follow. So if people don't know exactly what happens yet, it creates a reason that they can return. It also gives you specificity. Again, your actual constraints around your unique situations make the story uniquely yours. Building a business with a team is one story. Building one during nap time with no childcare is another. Accountability. It gives people in public that are watching you a way to create a visible relationship with you because what you're doing is something that they're attached, that they're latched onto. And if you don't stick to it, then they will either try to be helpful and call you out or whatever. I've seen this happen, especially people who share like weight loss journeys, right? There's also emotional investment. Like people begin to recognize parts of themselves in your effort. They not only are waiting to see whether or not you succeed, they are using your story to think about how they are showing up in their own. But this only works when you shape the story. Even though you're sharing it and it might be raw and real, you can still shape it so that you can kind of control the narrative, right? Building a public does not mean just like emotionally live streaming every single difficult day or every single detail of your life. It doesn't mean sharing details that you may have not processed yet. It also doesn't mean you're turning your audience into your therapist or your emergency contact. Like you need to have a very strong boundary line when you're creating a personal brand because it can get blurry very easily. Like your audience needs to be able to access the meaning of the experience, but not necessarily have unrestricted access to you. And you guys know I love telling you how all of this is related to becoming and being strategically human. AI can summarize your expertise. It can organize your lessons. It can write an attractive bio, but it just cannot replace your lived experience. Your humanity is not just valuable because you disclose everything. It's valuable because your decisions, your interpretations, your voice, and your lived context gives that information meaning. That's important for you to remember. Like AI can't explain the lesson, but it can't be changed by learning it. Strategically human content lets your audience see not only what you know, but why it matters as a human living life. Your Start Ugly assignment for today is to finish these 3 sentences. I have earned the right to talk about, I understand something unusually well about, and right now I am seriously investigating this about, right? Because then you can find the overlap in those three. And then the overlap may be the beginning of your personal brand, or it might be the beginning of a new angle to talk about your content. It doesn't necessarily have to be a perfect niche carved in stone or something that you just always attach yourself to. It can just be for this chapter of your life. You're focusing on sharing meaningful experiences, your perspective, and your current investment to keep going. Then I want you to think about what's changing for you because you're going through this. What is at stake for you going through this or trying this new experiment? What are you doing about it? What can the audience learn, feel, or attempt alongside you? And what parts of the story of yours that you're deciding to keep private? All of this stuff is important before you go and create a whole content series or videos around it to share online. And if you know you have something meaningful to build around, but you keep getting stuck and trying to turn your full complicated life into a clear content direction and you don't know how to do it, this is exactly why this is exactly why I created my starter kit so that you can identify and clarify your account promise, identify the messages you want people to associate with you, and then turn those ideas into your first 7 to 15 posts without your life or your brand having to be perfect. It begins when you understand what the story is actually about. The starter kit is linked below. And remember that number one, you're not too early, you're not too ordinary, and you're not disqualified because your ending is still being written. Use what you've done, use what you've experienced, name what you understand, and investigate what still matters to you. Shape your story. Stay strategically human and start. Sorry, my husband and my daughter. Jesus Christ. Start ugly. I'll see you in the next one.